Hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar on how to use realistic job previews to increase retention. I'm Vervoe's Content Marketing Manager, Dom Hennequin. Dan Stockdale from Dentsu is my guest today. Hi Dan, hello.
Morning, Dom.
Morning. Look, while we wait for a few more people to join, in the chat, tell us where you're from. Last week I had a great lot of fun trying to interpret all the kind of abbreviations for American cities and states and stuff. So throw them at me again, and maybe Dan can help me out and figure out where you're actually from. Well, let's get Google up.
Auckland, that one's not even in America, Dom.
Yeah, where
Morning,
is that, California? No, I got that wrong. Right. Not a good start. Thanks, Steve. Auckland. Hello. Welcome from Auckland. What time is it in Auckland? Is it really early?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
There we go.
Great. Okay. Well, hello.
And for those wondering, I'm in rainy Melbourne this morning, and it's 8 a.m. here, and it feels like it's about 5 degrees.
Yeah, it feels like it's 6 a.m. to be honest.
It's 5 degrees centigrade for anyone operating in Fahrenheit.
Yeah. What would that be in? Yeah, right. What would that be in Fahrenheit?
I think it's like 12 or something. I don't know. I think it's like two and a bit times, isn't it?
Yeah. Honestly, we're doing it all today. So we've got Steve. Anyone else watching this chat? Anyone from the US this morning? Oh, Cyan's typing. Is it Cyan or Sean?
Sean. They're in hiding, Dom. They don't want us to know where they are.
Okay. Morning though. They're somewhere where it's morning. That's good. So they're kind of in Melbourne too. Stay dry, Sean. It's a wet and cold day. Stay inside. Cool. Well, look, I'll run through how today's going to run. Yeah, it's pretty gross out. I agree. Yeah, look, thanks for joining us. Just some housekeeping to start off today. Look, the webinar will run about 30 minutes. If we do go over by a few minutes and you need to run off, don't panic. We're going to send you a recording of the webinar later today. So you'll be able to watch it in your own time, watch it again and again. Which I'm sure many of our viewers do. And if you have any questions throughout today's session, just leave them in the chat and we'll try and get to them. And generally just feel free to interact with each other in the chat, say hello, introduce yourselves, tell us if you're in Melbourne and it's awful weather, tell us if you're in somewhere on the other side of the globe. We'd love you all to interact and get along. Look, let's start things. So in this session, we're going to be taking a look at retention and how using realistic job previews in your hiring process can help reduce attrition. My guest today, as you can see, is Daniel Stockdale from who's the Talent Acquisition Director at Dentsu, which is a multinational media company and digital marketing communications company with over 66,000 employees globally. Dan has over 20 years experience in the recruitment industry. He's worked for media, creative, digital, data and technology companies. He's currently responsible for Dentsu's talent acquisition in Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines and Malaysia. He was previously at OMG, that's Omnicom Media Group, where he was talent acquisition specialist and national talent acquisition manager. So Dan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Dom. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with a big, broad question. Retention. Why is it so important for businesses? Is it a time and effort thing? If you have to rehire, what's the financial impact of not getting it right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's part of the reason's self-evident. I don't think I'm telling anyone anything they haven't anticipated, but you invest a lot of time and energy into training staff and even businesses working within the same industry where you ostensibly do a lot of the same things. There's still your way of doing things, and so I think you make a big investment in staff, and when they leave, they take a whole lot of intellectual property with them. You're then having to replace that person, and there's the cost of attrition, there are online calculators where you can go and plug in some sums and get an idea of what it costs you whenever you lose an individual. But it's not just the cost of replacing them. It's the lost time with managers and co-workers training them. It's the, if you're utilizing external agencies, there can be a cost in having to recruit them. Even within recruitment, there's the ongoing costs of advertising, onboarding, making sure they have a positive onboarding experience. So it's not just about the cost in replacing them. There's the cost of what you lose as well. And that can be in, revenue with clients. It can sometimes result in loss of clients as well. If they've got a strong enough relationship with the client, it can often disrupt your business as well in that way. So, I'd say, retaining your staff for as long as possible is a really important function of any company at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And when do people, hiring managers, HR teams, companies in general, typically think about retention in your experience? Is it when someone's halfway out the door, or when they're bleeding, employees, or is it something that's kind of always on their mind?
Yeah, look, I think that's probably changed a lot over my career in the way employees are treated within companies. I think when I started working, the negotiating balance was very much in favour of the company, and labour market meant that there were more people than jobs. And over my career, I guess the Australian economy's grown faster than our labour market, and I think that's tipped things in favour of employees, particularly in a post-pandemic employment environment. And so I think companies are thinking about that a lot earlier. I think as a recruitment lead, I'm thinking about the impact of good recruitment processes on retention, because I do believe that I can influence retention through better selection practices. In most of the companies I've worked in, and over my recent experience, I'd say retention starts on day one when a new employee joins you. You invest time into what the onboarding experience is, and there's studies that demonstrate a good onboarding experience supports better staff retention. I think learning and development plans that, right from the start of your time at a company is an important part of a retention strategy. So I think companies are now thinking about how do we retain people right from when they join. I also think, what used to be 12-month review cycles are often happening a lot quicker at the moment as well. So I think the macroeconomic impacts, and I probably won't labour this point now, we can talk about it more, Dom, that the macroeconomic impacts of the pandemic and the constriction of labour supply in Australia has really changed the way companies are having to engage with employees and maintain relationships with employees to retain them.
Yeah, we'll get to the more strategic parts and sort of what you can do in onboarding at the beginning and selection process a little bit later as well. So let's just go back to the more reactionary parts of it. Say that you finally realize that you've got a retention problem and you're trying to come up with some quick solutions to sort of stop the bleeding, or stop someone from walking out the door when they're really valuable to the business. What tactics can you typically employ these days, and are they generally focused on the individual, or is there something wider that you can roll out in a really quick turnaround?
Yeah, I think everyone has an expectation, and I'll focus my comments on Australia and New Zealand. I do get some exposure to our global recruitment function and more specifically what's happening in the Asia Pacific region. But I'll focus on Australia and New Zealand, and I think people expect to be treated as individuals, and so typically the environments I've been in, what we're working towards is having a series of different levers, let's call them levers, that you can pull that will address the specific needs of the individual. I think a lot of that can be dictated by where people are at in their career journey, where people are at in their life. Life life decisions, whether they're looking to buy a house, whether they've just had a child, whether they're starting their career, and accelerated development's important. And so learning and development becomes more of a focus. So I think people want to be treated as individuals. The companies I work in typically negotiate on a one-to-one contract basis. It's not done through large awards and people having group entitlements. And so what we want to do is have as many different opportunities that we can put to people that are that they can then consider their own financial construct and their total package, because people will value different things at different points in their career differently. And so, a learning and development package for someone who's progressed in their career, and I'll speak from my own experience that, I'm a single dad half the week, and so having an opportunity to park at work is something that's really important to me, because it means that I can manage my responsibilities as a parent a lot easier. And so the value of a car park space to me is potentially disproportionately valuable when I compare it to say, an extra $5,000 a year or something like that, because it can have such a big impact on my ability to manage work and my own personal responsibilities as well. So I think for companies that, want to have effective retention strategies, you need to have a lot of different opportunities. You need to be looking at a broad range of levers or tactics that you can utilize and negotiate with individuals based on what's important to them and what they value the most, so that you make them sticky human beings to your company because they feel valued, they feel understood, they feel like their personal needs are being met. And then you want to make sure that these opportunities can be applied consistently as well. You don't need to give everything to everyone. I think people have a good understanding of that you can't have everything all at once, because where would you put it, Dom? And but you want to be able to get the things that matter to you when they're relevant to you, and people have an expectation that there'll be a level of fairness. I think people understand when they're negotiating that that they have to get the best deal for themselves, that they have some responsibility to negotiate that, but they expect to be dealt with in good faith as well, and to be made aware of opportunities that are relevant to them.
And just on some of those, you talked kind of like about sometimes it's an emotional reason that they're moving on from the company, or they want something different. And sometimes it's going to be something about, career progression or financial incentive to move on or to stay based on something you can offer them. How do you tease that out, and how do you do that proactively and figure out what is going to, what's going to keep some of your best employees retained to the business? Like, how do you figure out what they want?
Yeah, look, I think I might talk about it more within the recruitment context, and I think it's still relatable to retention. But I talk to my team a lot about needing to understand whether people are engaging in being rational decision makers or emotional decision makers. And if someone's engaged in making a rational decision, it's a lot easier to change their mind, because you can provide evidence on why they should change their mind. When someone's making an emotional decision, a decision that's driven by emotion, it can be a lot harder to change, because those things are intangible. And so it's about meeting their emotional needs and understanding what motivates them. And so, a really, really important part of every screening process that my team do during the recruitment process is asking the question, why are you thinking about leaving, and what are you looking for in your next role? And you understand their motivations on what's not working and what they're not getting in their current role, and what do they think they're looking for in their next role. And asking that question basically allows you to address their individual needs, and I think that translates through to retention as well. It's all about understanding how the person is making the decision based on what's important to them. And so I'd, to give an example of working with return to work parents who are going to be the primary caregiver for a young child. You understand that the pressures on them are kids getting sick of childcare and having to leave work and being able to pick up the child, having flexible work arrangements and not being made to feel guilty about, arriving late or leaving early and doing what they need to manage their own, manage their lifestyle and their family commitments. And so if you can understand that, you can craft a job offer or a job, if you focus more on retaining that person, to ensure that you're meeting their emotional needs. Because at that point, whether you're pitching a job or pitching them to stay at the business, an extra $5,000 or $10,000 might not be anywhere near as valuable to them as a flexible work arrangement for a year or two, or being able to go part-time and then scale back up to full-time in the future.
And just quickly to clarify, these discussions often happen when they've already indicated that they want to leave, or during a performance review, or during a, can these be proactively teased out, these kind of desires?
Yeah, look, I think it can happen at any time. I think, I think any responsible managers having a weekly or a fortnightly or even, a monthly catch up with their team. I catch up with my team fortnightly, and, I talk through, where they're at with work, what they're enjoying, what are the upcoming opportunities to engage in projects or learning and development opportunities. I think, retention is something you need to be doing every week in a regular cadence, and you need to be talking about what motivates them and how they're feeling and what the opportunities are, and what they need to do to get the kind of progression they want. And is it about varying their title? Is it about varying their remuneration? Is it giving them the opportunity to engage in a project that you're leading or that's coming up, to give them a learning and development opportunity? Is it about a formal learning and development opportunity? Is it about varying their workload to make it more manageable? I think there's a lot of things that you need to be discussing on a really regular basis to understand where your staff are at. So, I think the thing I'd be most disappointed with my own management is if I got blindsided by one of these scenarios. I think if you're having regular check-ins with your team, that you understand where they're at, and it's a state of evolution. It's not a line in the sand. It's not something that comes up every 12 months. It's something that you're doing on a regular basis, and you take every opportunity to continue to evolve it. And I think I'm also a really big believer in, and this will potentially come up when we talk a bit about realistic job previews and capability assessments, that a really big believer that if you set a job up for people that they enjoy, that they're much more likely to have longevity in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in just one sec, but just to cap off this little section, what if so you've got these levers to pull when, you've figured out that, what someone wants and what's going to keep them at the company a little longer or whatever it is, and it's all individual. What if word gets out about something that you've offered a particular individual, and all of a sudden there's a group of, other employees that are wondering, well, okay, I want that too. And I guess, where is the line where, you can't do this for everyone, or you need to, I don't know, come to the table and be a bit more frank and be like, well, not everyone is this person, or not everyone is as needed as this role at the moment. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's a really challenging question, Dom, because anything that involves people's egos becomes tricky, because it can provoke a lot of irrational emotional behavior when
I wouldn't know anything about that, Dan. So
when people being confronted with the idea that they're maybe not as valuable to the company as someone else, whether that's true or not. I think we're in an environment at the moment where the constrained labour supply has led to rapid salary inflation. And so I can understand existing employees possibly looking at people joining the business on improved remuneration. I think, part of that's what's driven really high staff turnover rates right across the economy, is that people see an opportunity to improve their remuneration, and so they're out in market. So, look, I have an attitude, I never send an email that I wouldn't be happy to have it end up in the newspapers. And, conversely, I also don't like to make offers for jobs and provide entitlements to people that I can't validate and justify to other people with comparable experience levels within the business. And certainly at Dentsu, we're very mindful of that. And it's been a part of our process in the time I've been there to ensure that the people we're bringing into the business aren't getting disproportionate outcomes to our loyal staff. And so, I think it's really important that anything you do needs to be done at scale. You need to be aware that, people are going to be aware. Contracts have stipulations saying that you're not meant to discuss them with anyone else. But, I think sometimes things are obvious. Like if you're giving extra leave entitlements, people are going to notice that when they're not there. And so I think it's really important that, and I have 3 principles for recruitment, which is that I want the functions I run to be consistent, transparent, and objective. And I think, you need to take the same approach with retention as well, that any entitlements you're offering, you need to be able to apply them consistently, and you need to be prepared for the eventuality that you're going to have to be transparent about it. And so you need to conduct yourself objectively when you're negotiating either retention packages or job offers for people, to ensure that you can make sure that you can give the same opportunity to existing staff. And if not immediately, you need to understand and be able to communicate what kind of timeline is available to put them on a par with people you're bringing into the business or people that you're bringing into the company. And I will add a caveat to that, because I'm a big believer in equality of opportunity, but not equality of outcome. And I think we're entering into individual negotiations, and if you're a particularly talented negotiator and you know exactly what you want, and you're able to push for a company to deliver it, I think you partly have an obligation to respect the contract and respect that negotiation, and then keep those entitlements to yourself to not disrupt the business. Sure. But I think individuals, we live in a free market economy, Dom, and we're all entitled to go and get the best opportunity for ourselves. Except for a lucky few, we're not doing this as a hobby. We're working to earn an income to support families or a lifestyle. And, I think people are entitled to go and get the best deal they can for themselves through those negotiation processes. And I think sometimes that's going to result in outcomes for some individuals that don't align with their peer group. And so I think you want to be able to justify that to yourself. And I think it's okay for that to happen in some circumstances, and for individuals with specific talents and specific experience that might be able to make a disproportionate contribution to the business, that it's okay to be in that position. But I also think, candidates and employees need to understand that when you negotiate these things, you also set an expectation for yourself. And I do a lot of coaching with people who are earlier in their careers when we're discussing salary expectations and what they might be able to earn with the business and what other benefits and entitlements might be available and what their job title might be. And I coach them about the fact that they're going to be setting an expectation that, if they're a manager level candidate and they want senior in the title and they want an extra, $10,000 in their pay packet, that, they need to understand that it's going to come with an expectation of additional responsibility, improved output, better quality of work, better ability to manage processes and clients and all those kind of things. So, I think it's, these are all two-party agreements and everyone's got their role to play, and then, they need to understand their responsibilities and the expectations it creates when you negotiate these things. It's, it's not just a matter of putting your hand out and getting everything you want. You've then got to deliver on the expectation you've created as well. So, I think people need to go into it with that understanding that if you don't ask, you don't get. But at the same time, what you get, you've then got to deliver on.
Yeah, definitely. It's an exchange of value. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's I did a law degree at university, and something that stuck with me is the concept of consideration. That for a contract to be legal and binding, there's got to be something exchanged between the parties. So, if it's the labour for money, that the company's providing consideration in exchange for what you're promising to then come and deliver. And I think people need to understand that that's what they're signing up to, and that's the expectation, and that's going to differ by employee. And so I'll go back to my original comment where I was saying I want it to be able to be applied consistently, and I want everyone to have the same opportunity, but that doesn't necessarily need to result in the same outcome for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we've talked a lot about sort of like the levers you can pull and benefits and things like that for retention. Let's talk about realistic job previews. So tell us a little bit about what they are, what's so realistic about them, and how, in your opinion, they can impact retention.
Sure. I might start from a more philosophical point of view, Dom, and I tongue-in-cheek like to claim this approach as patented. Feel free to steal
copyright or a TM, or what do you need?
Whack a big copyright logo up on the screen for me. But feel free to steal it, people. That I often have people approach me wanting to change careers and change jobs, and I discovered no one really had a framework for working out, what is it about their current career that they want to change, and what do they want to do next. And so an exercise that I put people through is I get them to write out the 10 tasks that they do most frequently in their job. And then I get them to give it a score out of 10 on how frequently they have to do that task. And again, a score out of 10 to gauge the level of emotional satisfaction they get from completing that task. And so after I kind of worked out that framework, and I did it for myself as an agency recruiter, and I kind of decided that seeking out new business was a high frequency, low emotional satisfaction task for me. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I'd worked in media sales for 12, 15 years, and I wanted to change, and that's part of the reason why I went internal. And so, excuse me. So the coaching I give people is about what you want to do is move your career towards jobs where you have more of the high frequency, high emotional satisfaction tasks. Because essentially, in one respect, whilst you want variety and learning and things like that, a job often can be boiled down to what are the 10 things that you have to do most frequently. It's about repetition. It's about being able to do those tasks quickly and repeat them quickly with accuracy. And so I took that framework and that methodology and applied it to a selection process. And so, and I'll take our entry-level recruitment as an example, where I looked at what are some of the tasks you need to be able to perform when you come in and start a role with us. And it might be as simple as a communications task. Can you write a good email to a client that's succinct and explains what's going on and the action that needs to be taken? We work in advertising, and so we're dealing with negotiating the price of advertising a lot. So it might be working out a discount on a television or radio commercial. It might be, can you use an Excel spreadsheet to determine a cost per 1,000 and an average discount and the delivery of a digital ad campaign? And so I then built capability assessments, basically, that test an entry-level candidate's ability to perform those tasks. So it doesn't matter what university degree you did. It doesn't matter, whether you went to university. It doesn't matter what your educational background is. It doesn't matter what your religious background is, your sexual persuasion. None of those things. I'm not interested in those things. I want an objective, consistent, transparent process with as little bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious bias. Hopefully it's unconscious bias. I don't want those things in my selection process. I'm really devoted to the idea of equality of opportunity for everyone. And so I want to remove as many barriers as possible. And so I make our selection process about, do you have the capability to perform the task that you're going to have to do in the first 6 months of that job, basically to pass probation, to get on with your learning and development journey with the business. And particularly in entry-level roles, about 50% of those jobs is learning and development and learning the tasks to be able to become a more advanced or more senior member of staff. And what I found is that at our staff retention, and again, I'm talking about entry-level staff, my experience has been is that entry-level staff in their first 12 months with the business, the attrition rate dropped from something like 44% down under 8%. And it was because candidates were getting a realistic job preview of the tasks they were going to be expected to perform when they started with us. And within Dentsu, we have creative agencies and a media agency. Excuse me. A creative agency is obviously responsible for, creating the television commercial or the radio ad. And it's very creative. The media agency is responsible for maximizing the return on investment from a client's advertising spend, which is essentially econometric modeling. So if you're a communications graduate and you come out of university and you're not quite able to distinguish between a creative agency and a media agency, and you're really creative and that's what you want to do, if you end up in a media agency, you're in the wrong place and you're not going to enjoy the work. You're not going to get that high emotional satisfaction from the task that you have to complete. And so creating a capability assessment that imitates the work you have to do, gives them a realistic job preview, and they understand the task they're going to have to do. And it gives me an employer, if they're good at those tasks, it gives me an indication that they enjoy those tasks. Because I believe if you're good at something, it means you enjoy it because in most instances, you've taken the time to learn it, and you're more likely to want to invest in learning more and becoming more advanced at those things that you're good at. And so I see a really strong correlation between people's emotional satisfaction in the tasks they have to complete at work, and then testing people's ability to do those tasks and the capability to do those tasks. The way it gives candidates a realistic job preview as to what they'll be doing in the job, and then the flow-on effect to staff attrition and retention and progression.
And Dan, talk to us a little bit about what a realistic job preview looks like, say at Dentsu at the moment, and how you create it, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. So, well, look, I'll start with a minor precursor that we also build into the assessment some screening tools. So the first few questions we ask people about, their location, their work rights, their notice period, to get an indication of some of those things. So there's also a big time saver for us as well in using an online capability assessment, because we can build some screening into it. So it's really efficient and effective for my team. And then what we do is we imitate the tasks that they're going to have to perform most frequently. I make sure that they've, within our media business, that they've got the numeracy skills to be able to generate insights from data, that they've got attention to detail, and, they're able to ensure that, the correct material instructions are applied to material buys so that the correct ads run targeting the correct audience. So for me, it's you want to create a 45-minute to 60-minute online experience where they're challenged to perform tasks that they're going to have to do with a high degree of frequency when they start with us. And then I also like to put in some things like a video question or two, because we work in a communications company where communication skills are important, and you're often having to communicate, complex tasks, processes, and concepts to clients. And we want people that are good communicators as well. So I'm a bit of a lunatic for Excel skills and being able to use Excel. I'd like to think that every high school student should be graduating high school with an ability to sort, clean, and utilize data and extract insights from it. I don't think it matters anymore what industry you work in. You could be a high performance coach with a sporting team, and you need to be able to take split times and training outputs, and you need to be able to sort them and generate insights from them. And so I think business software is another really important thing that I'm looking for to see if people are work ready. Are they ready to join the workforce? Do they have the skills that are going to allow them to fast track their careers and progress quickly? And particularly in an environment like what we've got at the moment, where staff turnover rates have increased due to macroeconomic factors, you need people that can get up to speed quickly. And so, for us, and again, you look at entry-level staff, the opportunity to give every single person that applies the same opportunity to demonstrate the capability to perform the task it's a game changer for our business.
Yeah.
And before we move on, Dom, the other thing that I'd really highlight, I really want to go back and highlight as well, is that giving every candidate the opportunity to complete a capability assessment does great things for your culture and your diversity and inclusion as well. Because you're not making any selection decisions based on anything other than their ability to perform the task. And traditional methods of recruitment, where you might get 100 CVs in, from a time point of view, you might only be able to look at 40 of them or 60 of them if you've got the the staff required to get through that many. And I think it does great things being able to give everyone the opportunity to demonstrate their capability for the job. And, it brings me back to that concept of equality of opportunity that I spoke about earlier.
Yeah, and we will wrap up in just a second here, but just to kind of sum that up. So the results, I guess, are that, it's increased retention, but also it's opened, the talent pool up to a more diverse kind of set of candidates. I guess my last question would be, how are you able to open it up to everyone and still kind of efficiently, offer a test and grade it properly and all of that? And I guess lastly, do candidates want to do that? Is it a barrier for them? Have you had any issues kind of getting them to complete these sort of job simulation, realistic job previews?
Yeah, look, it's not universal. It's not 100%, but the feedback I get from candidates is really positive. They appreciate the opportunity to have a realistic job preview and to understand what we do. It's not quite gamified, which might be a little bit more engaging, but certainly the variety between, doing a short video, filling out an Excel, putting in formulas, doing some multiple choice questions, rewriting a poorly written email. They enjoy the variety. They enjoy that they can do it in their own time. We can input a bit of a hype reel, a bit of a brand EVP video as well that explains who we are. And so there's just a much deeper exchange of information. And certainly for, mature age candidates that are trying to change career, I've had a couple of people come back to me and say, I just really appreciated the opportunity to actually demonstrate what I could do because I wasn't being given an opportunity elsewhere. And, from a transactional point of view, being able to use a platform like Vervoe, where we can put every single candidate that applies through it and then have an AI market, it means we can transact at a much faster pace with a much broader pool of candidates and make much more accurate hires off the back of it. And, the quality of candidate improves dramatically as a result of online capability assessments, and making those more reliable hires then flows into better staff retention as well. So, I've seen huge benefits from the processes we've been discussing.
What a way to end it. Dan Stockdale from Dentsu, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you as well, everyone who joined live and everyone who's watching on demand. We went a little bit over, but this is probably the kind of time period that we'll do for future webinars. So just an FYI. And if you did need to run off, obviously, or you want to watch this again, we'll send you the replay in an email later today. We'll be back soon with another Vervoe webinar. But for now, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.